What's up, everybody? Welcome back to I guess not welcome back. This is the last one. So, welcome to the final video about WandaVision. We're talking about episode 9, the series finale, because it is a limited series, so I don't think there's going to be a season 2. And so, we're just going to go right into it. This is not really going to be a recap because we don't really need that. You could just watch the episode. But if you haven't watched it, go away from this video, go watch it on Disney Plus, and then come back here because we are talking full spoilers. And today we have my guest back again, Jasmyn, to talk about the final episode, which we just watched. So, Jasmyn, we've enjoyed the show so far, and we both came out of the finale, at least on the first watch, with mixed feelings. And I think it's something we have to sit on, but generally speaking, what did you think of this last episode?
If I had to describe my feelings after the last episode in just one word, I think my word would be underwhelmed.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great stuff. Don't get me wrong. It's Marvel, so there's gonna be great stuff, and a lot of great reveals and things, but there's also a lot of stuff that it seemed like they built up, but then it just kind of, at least for now, amounted to nothing. I feel like there are a lot of questions that are still left hanging that they probably are gonna answer in future movies like Doctor Strange 2 and Captain Marvel 2. But at least in terms of this story, I think for the most part they did fine wrapping it up, but like again, based on everything else we've seen so far, it just didn't feel as I don't know. I guess it didn't feel as satisfying as we thought it would be. So let's just get right into the details. It starts off, of course, with Agatha and Wanda facing off, and it turns out that she is trying to, in fact, drain Wanda of her powers. So like Wanda's trying to fight her, but then Agatha using her like reverse trick that she had in the last episode to try and like drain her magic. So the whole fight is them going back and forth, and like she's trying to steal the magic. But then there's this moment where they end up in the town, and that's why I think there's a really good moment for Agatha, where she was kind of talking about, well, you have all these people here, you can just let them go. If this is your power, if you're not an evil person, you can let them go. Heroes don't hold people hostage. And I'm like, okay, she's making a very valid point here. Like, I see where she's coming from there, and it makes a lot more sense. So there was this part where she turned everybody's programming off, basically. She did what Vision's been doing throughout the series, and everybody's basically back to normal. And so we get Dottie, she's the first person she unlocks, right? But Dottie also turns out to be no one. She's just someone, like a parent, apparently. She has a kid who's been locked away in the Westview houses or whatever, and she wants her kid to be free. But everybody's speculating about who Dottie is because they didn't really reveal her towards the beginning, but she, as of right now, is nobody.
Something that I kind of wish we got, and that's one thing also, I kind of wish that this episode had been a little bit longer, too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Marvel. They have, on multiple occasions, given us 2.5 hour things, and we've been okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
Something I kind of wish is that we maybe had just gotten a couple scenes to see people reuniting with their families and stuff, like seeing Norm meet up with, I think it was like his sister and his really ill father, or seeing Dottie reunite with her daughter Sarah. I think that was her kid's name. Like, even if it was just like, a quick little 20-second, like, oh my goodness, I've missed you so much, I feel like that would have been at least somewhat satisfying to have seen, give us like that wholesome Marvel feeling of like, oh, they kind of saved the day, even though they kind of ruined the day in the first place, kind of a feeling. But yeah.
I would say what you're kind of getting at there is like there's like a missing element of closure to this, because, and I was kind of talking about this after we finished the episode. Like, for example, we're gonna go for it a little bit, but we get one or two more scenes with Jimmy Woo, but nothing else really happens with him. I mean, he calls the FBI to come help him, and they all storm into the Hex to save everybody, right? And they get Hayward, right? But then Darcy, she comes in and rams him with the truck, and then after that, she's just gone. They say she doesn't want to do debriefs. I'm like, okay, I guess that's fine, but we didn't really get to see a proper send-off for her. And Monica, we do get somewhat of closure because we know she's going to be Captain Marvel too, so we see in the end credit scene that she does meet with one of the Skrulls who says, my friend wants to see you up there, like talking about space. So she's going to space, which is cool, but then you don't really see them say bye to each other, you know what I mean?
I feel like I didn't really need that, though, for like in terms of like an end credit scene. Like, we know she's going to be in Captain Marvel too, and like, we know that she's associated with Captain Marvel. They mentioned like Auntie Carol and like her moments where she's getting her powers. I loved seeing her use her powers and whatnot, when she was kicking Ralph's butt and things like that. But I don't know, I guess, again, just sort of feeling underwhelmed with that being the end credit scene. Not a huge
Yeah, so we'll get to Ralph too, because that's another thing. But let's back up a little bit. So we do see actually White Vision versus. I mean, we can't even call him normal Vision because the Vision we've known so far has been, as we find out, a part of the Mind Stone. Like I wouldn't say an illusion because it technically existed, but we find out basically that he and the kids only exist in the hex, and once the hex is gone, they're gone. Well, as of right now, because there's hints at things later, but we do see the two Visions fight each other, and then they have this discussion in the library about what was the ship? There was like a myth about this ship. I forgot the name of it already.
Yeah, I like that though. That was a scene that I really enjoyed because it actually even got me thinking, like, true, like, if all of the parts of the original ship are being taken away and rebuilt, is it still
The ship.
called the boat? The ship, the boat, whatever.
Yeah, whoever's boat it was, and I know people are probably gonna yell at this in the comments, but yeah, whoever's boat it was, the whole question about like who is the real Vision, or maybe we're both the real Vision, we're just different parts of him. But we'll call it Hex Vision and White Vision. So Hex Vision unlocks White Vision's memories, so now I guess he is back to being the Vision we know. But then the problem is we don't see him again after that, because I thought they were gonna fuse together or something, but then they didn't do that.
Yeah, that would have been really cool.
It would have. But then that also raised the question then, like, I mean, this whole thing's about her processing grief, and so it would have been weird for her to have to deal, or the whole thing about her processing losing Vision on top of everything else, right? But then for Vision to just come back as if everything goes normal, well, I mean, of course, not the same Vision, but, like, basically, to have all this show be about losing somebody in grief, to then have that person just come back in the end, that does feel like it sort of undercuts themes to a degree. Like, I mean, you do still see her process all the stuff, but then just to have that person that she lost come back at the end is like, well, why didn't you just do that in the beginning? You know what I mean?
That leads me to wonder, what happened with Night Vision? Because even when we were watching it, we were watching it together, like, on video chat. And I remember unmuting and being like, oh, like, what if at the end of this episode she ends up going off into the sunset or whatever you want to call it with White Vision? Like, what if she ends up with that? And then when they started hinting at, like, we've said goodbye before, we'll say hello again later on, that kind of had me thinking, like, oh, okay, maybe somehow that will tie into the story. That's where I thought they were going at first, but now, I don't know.
We don't. And that's the thing. There's a lot of questions that they don't answer. There's a lot of loose threads. And I know some of them were left there on purpose because of the sequels, but some of them were like, why is that a loose thread? You could just tell us now. Like, where's White Vision? I mean, let's get into that. Unanswered questions. Where's White Vision? What happened to all the townspeople? Are they just cool now? What happens to Agatha? Because actually, let's talk about that too. All right. You know what? I'm very scatterbrained right now. But so the big fight happens, and we see Wanda and Agatha finally face off like head to head, and then Wanda flips it on Agatha and steals her powers, and then fully becomes the Scarlet Witch with the uniform or the costume. That was really cool. I'll admit that was probably the coolest moment.
That was my favorite scene in the whole episode. Like, seeing her and, like, what was the runes all around. I was like, she flipped the switch on her. And that's really when I started thinking, like, okay, I know in the comics that Agatha was kind of like Wanda's mentor. So that was like one of the first things where she even says, like, thanks for teaching me that trick or something along those lines. So that really had me thinking, like, maybe after this big fight, whatever you want to call it, they kind of come to terms with, like, you're super powerful with your superpowers. I'm powerful in knowledge. They could team up together and maybe somehow, create a really cool bond or relationship. And I really didn't like Agatha's send off with just, you're going to be the nosy neighbor. And also, is she still going to be a nosy neighbor? Because doesn't that only work in the hex, and the hex is now gone? We don't really know.
That's true. And the thing is, yeah, I felt like especially with Agatha, I think towards the beginning she was doing really well, and I think they were able to still keep that nuance that she had in the last couple episodes, where you're like, is she really a villain, or maybe she was more to her? But then I feel like in this episode she just became I won't say generic, but she became the MCU villain at the end, the mustache twirly villain. Like, haha, I'm evil, I'm gonna drain all your power, and then that was it. I mean, and there was that good moment, like I mentioned earlier, where she was kind of confronting Wanda about the ethics of what she was doing with the Westview residents. That was good. But then I feel like after that, she just became that CGI villain that you fight at the end of the superhero movie. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then, like you said, she's gone for now. But the question is, because they do take down the Hex by the end of this episode, does the nosy neighbor thing stick? We don't know.
So I just want to give one quick, I guess, like shout out type thing because I've always been a fan of things that I think her name is Catherine Han
Catherine
has
Hahn,
been
yeah.
in. Catherine Han, Han.
Han, yeah. Like Han Solo.
Okay, my bad. Oh, okay, gotcha. And I think that her acting was really, really good
Yes.
in WandaVision. I mean, she was able to be like the oh howdy neighbor, like, and then like the mustache twirling, or just I think we had even mentioned before, I liked how her character wasn't even necessarily evil. She was a wicked witch. And I really loved that for her character. And I think that Catherine Hahn was able to play that all out really, really well. And I would definitely say that her acting and her character was one of my favorite things in the whole series.
I agree with what you just said. Like, yeah, she did a great performance throughout. Catherine Hahn did amazing here, and definitely one of the standout performances of this whole series. We're gonna call it series because it's a limited series. She did amazing, and even though the ending to her character is a little iffy for both of us, I think she still did amazing, like you said. So now let's go to Ralph. So we find out who Ralph was, who was this husband that Agatha was hinting at the whole series, and we thought it was just a joke, or maybe it's Mephisto or some other villain. But it turns out Ralph is Quicksilver, or who we thought was Quicksilver. So basically, when all the fighting is happening, Monica is trapped in a room with fake Pietro, whatever you want to call him. So they're trapped in a room, and she's looking through some papers on the table, and she finds out that his name is actually Ralph Boner, of all names, and that he's been working with Agatha, and she's controlling him using a necklace. And then that was it. So he's not, or at least as of right now, he's not Peter from the X-Men movies. He's just a random guy that Agatha was controlling. And so that's like, in a way, that's like sort of two disappointments. But then one big thing about this finale is that I think Marvel fans were kind of setting up all these big theories and getting their hopes up, and Marvel wasn't necessarily saying, "Hey, chill out. It's not going to be that crazy." They never actually put it out there. They just let people run with it to get all hyped up. So that's why I think a lot of people might be disappointed in some of the things that happen here because they had such high expectations and they just
Myself included.
yeah. So I mean that's the thing like with superhero shows and stuff and movies, there's always a bunch of theories and stuff and things don't always turn out how you want. But my thing is they already did this with the Mandarin in Iron Man 3, and so after the backlash of that, they had to go back and fix it so that the real Mandarin was coming in the next in this phase, right? But now they're doing the same thing again as of right now. I mean, it could be a lie, it could be a misdirect again, but why would you do that again in this finale? Like, why didn't you just reveal whoever he really is here instead of saving it for a movie, which we don't even know which one it's going to be? It could be Doctor Strange 2, it could be something else, we don't know, but as of right now, it's just like, well, that kind of sucks that Evan Peters is not playing Quicksilver. What do you think about that?
And like my word at the beginning, just really underwhelming. I mean, I feel like when I first saw Evan Peters show up as Pietro, whatever you want to call him, kind of like what you said, I had all these expectations like, oh, is this going to lead into mutants? Like, is that really Pietro? Or then I guess that kind of goes into like the overall theme of the thing. Like, you want her to be able to process her grieving. And I guess if he ended up actually being her original Pietro, that wouldn't have really worked. But if it were, like an introduction to like the multiverse or something, that would have made more sense. But again, we don't really have any answers, and that could just be because I spend all of my time, looking into all these different theories and stuff, and now I'm just, nothing's exceeding my expectations. But I don't know. Again, just really underwhelming with the whole Ralph thing. I kind of wish that there was some like big reveal to who this mysterious husband we keep hearing about is, or something like that. But I just kind of feel like, oh,
Yeah. Now I will say one part of it that I think we did get satisfying closure for is Monica and Wanda's relationship, because after the big battle and Wanda comes back after she resets everything and she's back in those clothes that she was wearing in the flashback, right? But she goes to the center of town to meet with everybody. Monica's there and she's like Monica says something like they don't know what you sacrificed for them or something like that. And she's like it's fine, they would still hate me anyway, but she's like I don't hate you, or basically she asked, Wanda asked Monica why didn't she hate her, and she's like, well, I probably would have done the same thing if I had your powers. So I'm like, okay, that was sweet. And so she says sorry, like Wanda actually says sorry, Monica, and she says it's okay, and then she walks off. So I thought out of all the relationships and stuff in this, besides Wanda and Vision, I think that was also the most satisfying relationship there because you could see they understood each other in such a way because they both suffered such big losses in their life, and then to have that all wrap up and uh, those two are on good terms as of right now, I think that was cool and that was satisfying for that. So another cool moment that I think was really satisfying was when Hayward had came into the Hex to catch Wanda or kill her, basically everybody, the whole family teamed up together, like Incredible style, to fight the military and to fight Agatha and fight White Vision all together. And well, actually, I don't know. I think White Vision was gone by that point, right? I think he was.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was gone. Okay, so it was just Hayward's people and Agatha. So that was a great scene with the kids fighting, and then Wanda or not Wanda, Monica jumps in to help them too, and we see her more of her powers. Like Hayward tries to shoot the kids, and she like catches the bullets in her body and then just like spits them out. Like it just goes through her, but like loses momentum and just drops. And then one of the bullets gets past her, but then it's Billy. Billy stops it with his powers. And then she's like, "Cool trick," and he said, "You too." And that was a sweet moment too to see those three together finally. Because actually, I don't think she had met them yet by that point. She did not.
Were delivered.
Well, that's okay. That's true. She did. She was there to deliver them, but she didn't meet them like after they aged up. Um, but that was a cool moment too. So seeing them all fight together, incredible style. But now we see that basically. Right. So now let's go to the end. So we see Wanda walking to, like we said, the town square. She says bye to Monica, and you can see everybody's looking at her like you are a terrible person. Like everybody's giving her the side eye, and of course because she controlled them for I guess it's like a week. This all took place, or maybe even a few days. I don't even know how long this actually took.
Yeah, something like.
So yeah, I mean, because they were talking about how bad it was for them. Like they got her nightmares when they fell asleep, and they couldn't go talk to their families. They couldn't do anything. Some of their family members were trapped because of her. Like there's a lot of messed up stuff that happened because of the Hex. So I totally understand where they're coming from.
If they do ever go into like, I guess maybe reintroducing these characters in future Marvel creations, it could be one of those things like how after Endgame you find out like just how bad, you know, the snap or like things that happen after the snap were for certain people. Like how in WandaVision we saw just how awful like even just people coming back from the snap was for people like Monica. So I feel like maybe in like some future Marvel creation, if they ever like, let's say they bring Norm back or something like that for a scene and they go really deep into what it was like, showing what it was like being under Wanda's control and stuff and like worrying about your family. I think that would be a really interesting thing to see or find out in future whatever.
Maybe. So yeah, I mean, because there's definitely a lot of ramifications for what happened here, and that's another big thing is so we see Wanda fly off into the sunset basically, like you were saying, but without Vision, and the end credit scene, the second end credit scene is we see her out in the middle of this forest in a cabin, and it looked like she's just chilling there making some tea, but then when they bring the camera in more and they turn the corner to this other bedroom, you see her there with the Darkhold, which is another big thing actually, another big reveal. So actually, let's go back. So it turns out the book that Agatha did have in her underground lair was the Darkhold, which for me was confusing because they introduced that into Agents of Shield, which to me makes me think that this is official that Agents of Shield is not canon anymore, which is sad because it was a great show and there's a lot of great stuff in that show, a lot of great characters and great moments. But basically, I think this confirms that it's no longer canon, or maybe they changed something. But basically, the Darkhold looked different and worked differently in the show versus here. So I don't know, but that is cool to see that that crossed over, I guess, into this version of the MCU. But anywho, so when Wanda drains Agatha's powers in that last fight, she then also, I guess, gets the Darkhold, like she inherits it from Agatha, who says also, "You don't know what you unleashed by doing this or whatever." Which I guess is also a hint at what's happening in the next movies, but we still don't know what that means for sure. It's very vague. But we see Wanda tinkering with it and reading it and flipping through it using her powers. And then we hear the boys' voices, Billy and Tommy, saying, "Mom, help us." So at first I'm like, is that just a flashback? Like, because that did happen earlier in the series. Or does it mean that the kids actually got sent off somewhere after they disappeared when the Hex went down? We don't know. But I did feel like I wanted a little more explanation, just a little bit more.
I feel like that was a common theme with the show just throughout the whole thing. Like, one episode happens and your questions from before are answered, but now you just have 10 more than you did when the episode started. And I mean, I guess in a way it was nice because you had something to look forward to the next week, but you don't really have another WandaVision episode to look forward to. Obviously, there's other Marvel, you know, TV shows and stuff coming out soon, but again, just I feel really, I still, even after talking about it more with you, I'm still just feeling very underwhelmed with everything. I feel like I just have a lot of questions that I'm not sure are even going to get answered, and I don't know. I really loved the show, but I'm not super. I can't say that I feel super great about how it ended.
Yeah. So let's talk about the last thing. When we're talking about closure and things, we see Wanda say goodbye to Hex Vision, as we'll call him. And that was a sweet moment. And also, they say goodbye to the kids. And I kind of realized in that moment, as the Hex was coming down, and you see the walls slowly closing in, that when they were saying goodnight to the boys, that they were actually saying, or at least Wanda was actually saying goodbye, goodbye, because they were about to disappear. But her moment with Vision was also really good, where she finally explains how he came to be, that he was a part of the Mind Stone, or though he's the part of the Mind Stone that was in her, and a mixture of her love, her pain, all that stuff. So I thought that was a powerful moment, and that was very sad to see them say goodbye, even though it wasn't really him. So that's why I'm like, I mean, you're saying bye, but also not really. But I guess that's also the closure she needed, because she didn't actually get to say goodbye before.
So kind of like what Vision was saying, like he's not a person, he's a, what's the word that they use to describe him?
Synthezoid, or something like that.
He's a yeah, yeah,
A thing.
a synthesoid. And I think it's also really important for her to remember that, like, he was able to live on even after, the first one that she got to get to know died once, twice, and whatnot. And kind of like how the conversation with X Vision and White Vision went with, like, even if we're not the original parts, we're still, you know, memories, or the rotting of the ship, if you want to call it, things like that. So, I don't know. That scene connected a lot with Wanda's goodbye, and I like that scene a lot too.
I would say the standouts are definitely, like you said, that part with them saying goodbye to each other, and then the part with Monica and Wanda, and the part with the two visions. I'd say those were probably the standout moments in terms of like character relationships. And then the big part would be like Wanda getting her powers and getting like the full extent of her powers, absorbing everything from Agatha, and then getting her full costume. Like that was cool. But and then also, of course, Hayward getting arrested. That was great.
I was kind of person that had so many different theories about Hayward. Like, is Hayward really Ultron, or like, what's his end game? Haha, pun, whatever. But like, I am glad that he got arrested. But I do wish that we got to at least see, like, Darcy being somewhat like her sassy self. Like, see you later, Hayward. Just kidding. No, I won't. Cause your butt's going to jail. Like,
That's
even
true.
something like that would have been nice.
All right, I know he said last thing was Wanda and Vision saying goodbye, but actually last thing was Hayward basically fully reveals his plan, which was to send in his Vision, kill the Vision or Wanda and the Vision that's inside the Hex. That way he can claim that Wanda actually stole the body and he was recovering such a dangerous weapon from her or something to try and make himself the good guy, I guess. So it's kind of like Syndrome in a way, like from Incredibles, where he staged a situation to make himself look like a hero to then get something out of it, like popularity, a new job, and promotion. I don't know what he was really going for. They didn't really explain that part, but his ultimate plan was just kind of like, it's fine. That's cool, I guess. So I mean, overall, again, the show as a whole is still really cool, really ambitious. A lot of great themes and stuff. A lot of great performances. Elizabeth Olsen, Paul Bettany, Catherine Hahn, Tiana Paris. Like, everybody killed it. I mean, absolutely everybody did amazing. It's just the finale I have to sit on. I'll probably have to watch it a couple more times to really like decide how I feel about it. But I would say the show as a whole is still worth watching, and it does get me excited for how this all connects. Because now I'm wondering, seeing Wanda messing with the Darkhold, I feel like that's probably going to cause whatever happens in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, because she's probably going to play with magic she's not actually trained to handle, so it's probably going to cause some very crazy stuff for the MCU. So maybe we still will get mutants or the X-Men or stuff like that. We don't know. And we also don't know who the person, who the engineer was that built Monica's rover a few episodes ago. We don't know that either. There's so many questions that they left for us. I hope they answer them in these movies, because if not, then like, what's the point? So overall, I'd still say we both enjoyed it for the most part. Like, without the finale, we'd say we pretty much enjoyed it all the way through. So what did you all think about WandaVision? Let me know down in the comments. Also, don't forget to like this video, share it, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one.